Hi, this is Getting the Message Out, a program sponsored by the Republican parties of Towns, Rabun, and Union counties. I'm John Alger, and the reason that we're doing Getting the Message Out is because with this corona pandemic, the candidates haven't had the opportunity to get out and talk to the people. They haven't had a chance to go to any big meetings, big or small. So this afternoon, we have Harold Copeland, who's running for re-election for Towns County Coroner, and we're just going to ask him to give us some of his thoughts and some of his platforms. So, Harold, as I was asked to talk to you, it really came to me that I didn't know what the day-to-day duties are of a coroner. I know you deal with dead people, but when you put on that coroner's hat, I don't know what those duties entail. So maybe that would be the place to start because I kind of feel like I'm not the only one.
Well, very good, John. And thank you for having me.
Hey.
It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm humbled by it. The call always originates. You'll get a call from Towns County 911 telling you that they need the coroner, whether it's a motor vehicle accident. Sometimes we have to go to the ER if our med unit carries somebody in, they've deceased. And then sometimes it's at somebody's home. So regardless of the situation, we respond. And we pretty much just have a check down list with our paperwork that we have to complete. Going into people's homes when the loved one's there it can be a heart-wrenching, tough thing. We have to make sure that if it's attended and the families are there, we get the last known alive time or date. Then we have to estimate the time of passing if they passed away in their sleep or whatever the case may be. And we pretty much fill that out. Their meds, their past medical history, at which point after that we call the medical examiner's office a GBI, and we give them their meds, what their meds are, and their past history. In other words, scenario based, your family member may say, well, John, he's had two stents 3 months ago, he has hypertension, he's a type 2 diabetic, whatever the case may be. We gather all that information. Okay. And when we call the ME's office, they pass it over to a doctor, and they give us, the method of death that's real simple. It's natural or accidental, but they'll try to help us with the cause of death. We're not pathologists here. So that's why we go through that paperwork. This is a GBI, and we have a pronouncement sheet, we do the pronouncement sheet, which is part of getting your death certificate, done for their family members or whatever. So that's pretty much what we do. We gather the information. Obviously, if there's foul play, there's always, when there's a death at the house, there's always a police officers there. I'm the last to get there. We're the last to get there. There's a fire and EMS is usually there. If it's a death at a home, the police officers are there, and there's an investigator on the way. So if there's foul play or there's a possible murder or anything that looks suspicious, at that point, it's law enforcement scene. And then we make sure the transport for the autopsy that would constitute an autopsy going to the ME's office.
Now, I'm going to assume that that's a decision that you don't make in a silo, that you work with the law enforcement folks who are there. Absolutely. And with the first responders to make that determination. Absolutely. Whether there's something suspicious.
If there's something suspicious, you're going for an autopsy. That's an automatic deal. If there's illicit drugs involved, and we detect that in the home or wherever we're at, then you're going for an autopsy. If you're a certain age, if you're young, if you're obviously children or infants, you're going for an autopsy. So there are certain things that constitute an automatic autopsy. If it's a suicide, a gunshot to the head, if the bullet were not to exit, you're going for an autopsy. There's times when the bullet does exit that the state may not take you. So there's different qualifications for the autopsy, but when it's just a natural death of here in Towns County, and it's a brutal subject, and but it's just what we do. We have the elderliest population in the state of Georgia here per capita. Probably the elderliest at one time east of the Mississippi here. So we have a lot of natural deaths. So if we call that, it's called a 109D. You may be deceased in your sleep. I had a family here just recently that the lady went to church, came back home, and her husband was deceased on the couch. So it's a natural death. And again, what I was alluding to earlier, we look at your meds, we ask about your past history, and then they give us the cause of death. In bigger cities, Atlanta, Cobb County, DeKalb, the different ones, their MEs or their medical examiners or in the coroner's office are together. Mm-hmm. So they have their own medical examiners. They don't have to call the GBI, for their normal stuff. But here in rural areas, all over the state and all over the country, your coroners do that. And again, we process the death certificate as well. But myself nor my opponent are pathologists. We gather the information and move it on. And it's tough. I want to tell you, there hasn't been a home that I've left when, and it chokes me up even thinking about it now, where there's grandkids or children involved, that when you get ready to walk out of that house, it don't squeeze your heart. It's tough.
I can imagine.
You got family, you feel the love in the home, and it can be tough.
Sure.
But, somebody's got to do it.
Gramps is gone.
Yeah.
Grandma's gone.
Mom, Dad, it's tough.
Yeah.
It's going to be tough.
So, that's where...
I've seen grandchildren where tears be pouring out of my eyes, where I can barely do my paperwork, and I just have to get up and leave, go outside the car a minute. Mm-hmm. And, when the family's emotional, sometimes it's not easy.
Well, and I can imagine trying to maintain that professionalism.
Yes, sir.
You are the county coroner.
Yes, sir.
You have to maintain a level of professionalism.
Absolutely.
But tugging at those heartstrings when that grandbaby sees granddad gone.
I can think of several situations where it squeezes me now because I'm a grandpa. So, what do you do?
Yeah.
But, and no two situations are the same. You'll have, sometimes it's unattended. We've had, you'll have people on the Appalachian Trail, for example, or campers or in a camper, or come up when people come to the mountains, come up here to our great community, our area, which is so special. They pass away in a motel room alone. So that's a different caveat in itself where the next of kin, getting up with the next of kin can be lengthy. At which time my belief is that person needs to be moved to a cooler as soon as possible. If it appears that we can't find the next of kin real quick, that we have one over in Blairsville, and to get the body 36, 38 degrees to 40 degrees to a cooler to help with the decomp. Mm-hmm. Some people have places to be buried, and a lot of people are nowadays get cremated. So there's other things we have to deal with. So
you're talking about all the experiences that you've had over the last 4 years. You were elected in 16. We're heading into your initial re-election.
Yes, sir. 3.5 years so far.
Okay, so what has happened over the last 3.5 years that you didn't expect? I mean, certainly you knew some of the things to expect when you moved into the coroner position. What's something that now you look back and you go, I sure didn't see that coming?
Well, yeah. Being a firefighter for 36 years, there's not a lot I haven't seen. Mm-hmm. There were things that I noticed over these 3 decades that we're on the scene, and sometimes it takes a coroner a while to get there. My first fire as a fire chief. I don't like going fire chief, but when it was April 5 years ago was a death fire. A lady passed away. I think that's another thing in bigger cities. There's been talk where in this race, there's been a lot of talk in different areas in this race that the fire chief shouldn't be the coroner, but I find it to be a pretty cool, a good tool in small areas like this, and I'll just say a firefighter being a coroner. First of all, there's no conflict there. There's no skin in the game for a firefighter if he is a coroner. And second of all, it gets us on the scene quicker because we're already en route there, and so many times to save a life. And there's been several that we've saved, whether using our AEDs that were laid lifeless in the house or in the yard or wherever. But it gets you on the scene quicker, which it's the first part of closure. Going back to what we was talking about, the grandpa or the scenario there. Your loved ones in the house, and maybe the family's around or whatever, or maybe they're in the bedroom and wherever they are in the house or yard. It allows you to start that process quicker, getting on the scene. If there's no foul play, it's that first part of closure, and that means a lot to me. That you can get that picture of that loved one on out of the house, find out if they have pre-arrangements. If not, I offer them options as to the 2 funeral homes that we have here in Towns County. And sometimes they're from out of state and they have other options, but we work on that and handle those arrangements for them as well. But you get that picture of that loved one on out of your head, and of course then it moves on through the arrangements or however then, and then they have the rest of their closure. But it's huge to me to do that, to get that loved one out of those kids' eyes. Or a lot of times I'll shut the door. Even when we're removing a body, I'll ask folks, and I'll say, I'm not trying to be rude or nothing here, but, I appreciate it's probably best you don't look, as we try to load the body and move on. So that part of it is different than when you're the fireman on the scene trying to, save the life and being there. But that closure part and going through that is something that's been a little different caveat for me in the last 3.5 years.
Now, before we came on camera, you and I talked, and you said that the pre-arrangements was something that's just, at the forefront of your thought all the time because of what you have to do, and it makes your job 600 million times easier if they're there. So why don't you talk to that for just a sec?
I will, Brother John. When I speak to different organizations, sometimes we get invited to, whether it's fire safety or the coroner's office here in this last 3.5 years, and I must say that 3.5 years has flown by. It's huge that, and I'll say it here, and let it get out, and hopefully it'll help somebody. Win or lose in this election, that have your stuff in order, have your pre-arrangements. We have so many part-time residents up here. Mm-hmm. We're blessed with many folks that come from out of town here, and a lot of great people. They live here 4, 5, 6 months out of the year, 6 or 8, and then of course when it gets cold, they go to warmer weather, which I wish I could. Maybe one day I can. But the being able to do that, they need to have their arrangements where if they want to use a local funeral home, if not, some of them may go to Murphy, some of them may go to Gainesville, some of them may go to, I had one other back in now went to West Virginia, but we can line that up. But if you're local here and you're living here, then have your stuff in order. Okay. It's huge to me. It makes it easier because if you look at me, probably well over half the homes that I've gone into, I say, who would you like to have, who do you have pre-arrangements, or who would you like to have to take care of your loved one? They'll say, I don't know. And when you say, I don't know to me, then I give you options. You either have our 2 local funeral homes here in Towns County, which is Coppers or Bannisters. Mm-hmm. And at which time, a lot of times they'll still say, I don't know. But they're both here, and it's like flipping a coin. So that puts pressure on a coroner. Not really no pressure on me, but it's good to have your stuff in order. It makes it easier, it makes the process easier, and we can move along with the process.
Well, it seems to me it's certainly something I've dealt with super high pressure situations, and yet I could see myself in a situation like this where you'd say, what do you have? Do you have pre-arrangements for your loved one? Even as well trained as I am dealing with pressure, I'm not sure that I could give. So the pre-arrangement is an outstanding suggestion. Look in the camera and tell folks you really need to have that done.
And another thing, and I got off thought process there, and you have to forgive me because I got a phone ringing me here. I hope you can't hear it.
No.
Good. it's like when you're traveling, let's say you and I go to Florida. We're going on a fishing trip, we're heading to the Keys. And let's say, God forbid, let's just scenario base it, we have a brutal car wreck. And there we are. And they don't know you and I, whether we're in Volusia County or Hillsborough County, wherever we are from Adams House Cat. I think that P is huge for people to carry identification in their cars, their next to kin, have it in your glove box, have it in your arm rest, even in your homes. Everybody's got refrigerator magnets. Have your information there that's easy to find. Because
Okay,
at that point, when you get that next to
in
kin.
full disclosure, I'm very happy to tell you that in my phone, I have an ICE entry in my contact list
That's
in
huge.
case of emergency, and it's about this long.
That's huge.
Everything is there
Because the
for you.
coroners down there are going through the same thing.
Yeah.
And so when we have people traveling through here and there's an NBA, a car accident, somebody's deceased, it helps. So having your pre-arrangements, having your information where it can be found, really helps that process. Being able to find that next kin is huge. And it's brutal even at that step's even brutal.
Oh,
When you
yeah.
notify the next kin. You massive emotions. You get a huge spectrum of all kind of emotions. So,
Disbelief, I would imagine, would be the initial
can't.
thing.
It's unbelievable.
I remember reading that when you ran in 16, it was because you wanted to reduce the response time of a coroner on scene. Can you tell me, in the last 3.5 years, do you think that you've been able to do that?
Absolutely. And you also have deputies. There's times where I'm out of town, whether I may be at the bowling alley or with my grandkids down in South Georgia or enjoying a good bulldog game. All my friends know I love my dogs. But yeah, we've I think our time and our response is been much better. And 85-90% of the time I'm around anyway. Mm-hmm. And that allows for my radio's sitting right over there as we speak. So it allows for a good response, quick response. And sometimes I have a county vehicle and then I have my personal vehicle. So, you try to keep all your paperwork and all of them, keep everything loaded at all times. That makes it fast.
Sure.
In other words, right now, my personal vehicle out here, I'm not going to drive all the way back home and pick my stuff up. I've got things here. Keep it with me.
Some of the questions that I came up with when I was offered the opportunity to talk to you, I thought, after a guy has been in a position for a while and he's had the opportunity to look at it, and there are things that he sees that may need improvement.
Yes, sir.
Things that could be, things that are in place that could be eliminated, things that could be added to. Are there things that, and what I'm thinking about is more regulatory. Are there regulations or laws that you need to deal with that you'd like to see tweaked, or eliminated, or ones that you think got to be put in place?
Yes, sir. Here in the last, my opponent is my deputy coroner, mm-hmm. and she owns a funeral home here in town, which is well known. And I've probably in the last 2 months, and with this COVID as well, and bumping the election on to a later date, which hadn't been no fun. I think all the sheriff's candidates were all kind of weary from it. But I've learned more about the funeral home business in the last month and a half, 2 months, than I would have ever wanted to not learn. But certain things come to light, and then also on the campaign trail. But I told you earlier exactly what we do and how we do it. Anybody in the state of Georgia can be a coroner, be elected coroner, or a deputy coroner, as long as you're not a felon and you've got a high school education. Because literally what we do is what I told you. We take care of the paperwork, we find out the meds and move on. There's different little line items that we fill out. But on the campaign trail, I've had many people, a lot of different people come to me right off the bat, and I never thought of it the way that I'm about to allude to here. about, I'll say, well, they say, who's running against you, H? And I'll say, well, my deputy coroner's running against you. And I'll kind of get the German Shepherd look. And then I'll say she owns a funeral home here in town. And one of the first things that comes out is a lot of people would say, well, isn't that a conflict? I never looked at it like that at first. I said, I never even used the C word, I call it now, until just here recently. And when I dug into it, got to thinking about it, and I've had another funeral home here in town used to say to me, they say, we just want it to be fair. And I'd look at them and being a rookie coroner, I go, God, I am fair to myself. I give them options, your place or the other place. But what I've, in digging around and looking at the internet and then seeing what's been going on here in the last few months, I find it too, I've been told or I've read from other folks that it may be a conflict being a fire chief and a coroner. Well, I find it not to be. Again, we come to, not a fire chief, a fireman, I'll call it that. We're coming to save your life, we're coming to help you, and then there's no skin in the game for me. And a lot of articles that I've read and things that I've been really pressed into educate myself on. And for people that hit me with that is pretty obvious. It's not hard to find where there's a lot of states, Pennsylvania, Montana, Washington, a lot of counties in this country where coroners are not allowed to be, funeral home directors not allowed to be coroners due to the possible conflict. Because like what I was alluding to earlier, John, is when they say, I don't know, I give options. And when you say, I don't know to somebody and that's their business, I'm not sure about the olive branch or what goes on there because I'm not there, but it stands to reason that there could be a conflict. And that's really come to the forefront here in the last 45 days to 60. And excuse me, let me say this, I had mentioned when I was, my opponent, I asked her to go out with me the first time or two when I was coroner and when I got the call. Because she had already done it. She'd already been a deputy coroner. When I was elected, she was a deputy coroner here in Towns County. And, we went out a couple of times and we get so much per case. The coroner here in Towns County you make $125 a month stipend. It's based on population here in the state. Bigger counties, it's a big salary. In the rural counties, it's not. And then you make so much per case. And we would split it, and then I kind of got the feel for it, and then moved on. But I can see now where, and it's been brought to my attention more than one. Oh, what I was about to say was when the other funeral home would say, we just want it to be fair. I'd mentioned to them about a year in. I said, well, I'm looking at maybe putting this on some type of rotation basis, especially unattended deaths, where it's fair to both funeral homes. And I forget what she told me, something about a lot of it is indigent care, where we take care of that too and go ahead and absorb the cost because some people can't pay. And so I don't know, I don't want to say swept it under the rug. I moved on, but I hear lately, and with the public coming up to me, I guess, I hate to say it, I guess the light came on. Because I really didn't look at it, and even at the beginning of the campaign, I didn't look at it that way until here recently, things I'd read in the paper, one thing and another, and I started researching it, and I never had done that before till now. That's the truth. A lot of places not allow that, and I'm thinking that the Secretary of State, the board that governs funeral home directors or funeral homes, morticians. I'm not sure, but I think I'm real close to being sure here that even if they're elected coroner, they're not supposed to work over 2 hours a week. So I don't know if that's put in place to try to control conflict or whatever. If there were 3 funeral homes here in Towns County and it's unattended death, what I would like to see, or what I would do is put it on a rotation where it is fair to all 3 homes. We have 2 here. So the deaths, like I was talking about, where there's no family around, there's nobody to, you're looking for that next of kin, you need to get that body to a cooler. Bannister's gets this body this time. If it happens a week later or that same day, then it would go to Cochran's, Bannister's, Cochran's, like that. In that way, it would be fair. And I understand now what the other home was talking to me about. It took a little while for the light to come on, but I'm seeing it now. It's tough business.
Okay, so when, I guess you need to flesh that out a little more before you make the final decision on what you're going to do exactly.
True,
when.
and now that you know that, I didn't know that I was all in behind the candidate for sheriff and was working. I didn't know that my own deputy was going to run against me, which totally, it kind of took me by surprise when she called me to her funeral home and told me, well, I'm going to run against you. I'll never forget what I told her. I said, well, it's America. You have that, that's your prerogative. It was like 4:30 or 5 in the afternoon when she texted me, and I went by, and that's about power nap time for me that time of day. And I was pretty tired, and I said, well, if I just reversed it. I said, if I was a deputy coroner and I called you to my place of business and I told you what you just told me, what would you do? And so the next day she bumped into me at the tag office, and at that point I said, I'm not going to fire nobody. I'm not going to fire you. I think we need to serve the citizens here of Towns County. That's what my job is as a leader, and that's what we're going to do. I mean, some of us may have vacations planned or whatever. So, it just got real touchy. I wasn't expecting it. It came out of nowhere. And again, as this election has progressed and been put away from COVID, it's got a little different. Do I like it? Not at all.
I wouldn't expect you would, but I like the way that you've approached it. And there's respect, and we're going to move through it.
Yes, sir.
After we get through the election.
Yes,
It may be a different story, but for now, with respect.
Yeah, absolutely. But with respect, that's well said.
Thank you. Okay, and the question that really that is going to be telling, the way you answer this to me, because this is my question.
Yes, sir.
Is you've been in position for 3.5 years now.
Yes, sir.
What does the coroner's office need?
Oh, we work under a budget. It's that the coroner's office just, I don't know. It would be good. I think Cochran said that they're going to put a cooler in here in the Hiawassee office. It's huge. We don't have a county cooler. We don't have a county. A lot of counties don't have a coroner pickup. I think Fannin County does. Some bigger counties have the coroner comes in and goes ahead and removes that body, whether it's unattended or whatever, and takes it to a cooler, which is a good thing. But we with the funeral homes here and the budget that we work with, which is adequate, as long as I have a couple of deputy coroners and I'm here, we're okay. I've been able to come under budget. We've the tax, which is the taxpayers' money. We have supplies. We have as I say, body bags. Gloves, masks, the things we all have to buy. So, anybody can say I need more money. I don't care if you're in the car business or the fire chief's business, wanting the budget, or the coroner's office, or the music business, or anything. We all say we all need more money, but we're budgetarily we're adequate at this time. We're fine. Just all we need is and we have and Tamlin has done a good job. She's a heartfelt lady. She's good to folks, I would say, and a lot of people like her. It just repeating, it took me by surprise when she ran against me. But having a cooler close is huge. Our closest one is in Blairsville. When I first came on as coroner, Tamla was working with the other coroner, Ms. L, I believe it was. And they would move bodies to White County, to a cooler down there. And there was some transportation fees that I noticed. Also, when there was different transports, I changed the way that was going on from how it was being billed and one thing and another. I changed that. I don't know if that might have aggravated somebody or not, I don't know. But in other words, back when I became coroner, Bannisters would bill the county for like $300. And then if they use a transport service, they would pay them. And when I found out about that, I said, no, you just need to, no, Mountain Word is done me. I'll do the purchase order out of our office and handle it that way. So I changed I tweaked a few of those things.
Do you have any idea how much money you've saved the taxpayers of Towns County by doing that?
I haven't tried to calculate it, but it's just on the, John, it's just a matter of how many, as brutal as this may sound, and it is, how many deaths you had. Whether they need to be transported, whether there needs to be autopsies, because that's a transport.
Sure.
You know, so it's hard to say. I could figure it up, but there's some savings, yes.
Okay, good.
And I'm very prudent on taking care of the taxpayers' money, and always have been.
And as a taxpayer, I appreciate that. Thank you, sir.
That's paying them, same here. Yes, sir.
So, again, this has been getting out the message. It's been sponsored by the Republican parties of Towns, Rabun, and Union County. And we've been talking to H. Copeland, who's running for re-election for the Towns County Coroner. And as we get ready to wrap it up, I'm just going to say, H, those are your people. Talk to them. Tell them what you want them to know.
Right there.
Those are they right there.
Very good. Thank you. Well, I just want to thank the citizens and visitors of Towns County, and especially the voters, of even when I ran unopposed in 2016, many people checked my name, and that was humbling. And I'm not the youngest guy on the block anymore, and I'm coming on in toward the latter part of my career, and I'm getting ready to enjoy my grandkids. But I'm hoping to win this election. I was really even thinking about kind of, I even told Tamala that, I'm just a few more years and I'd probably just slide this on to you. But once things kind of got personal, once things kind of changed, I'm in it to win it. And that's what I hope to do. So I humbly ask the citizens of Towns County to support me in this election. There's no conflict here. There will be no conflict after. I can assure everybody that after this election that there will definitely not be no conflict, because I will not allow it. And moving to a rotation to be fair to all funeral homes, that's what will happen. That's what's going to happen. And that's the only way to be. There's no skin in the game for me as a fireman. There's no monetary funds for me at all. I just believe in fairness. And I was raised that way, and I intend for it to be that way, and it will be that way. So I'll look at y'all and say, I appreciate your support. There's been no issues with this coroner's office. We've worked hard for you. Under my leadership, we will continue to work hard for you and try to get better every day at what we do. Every case is different. Every day is a learning process. And I'm happy to be a part of it. And I thank y'all for letting me serve you, and I appreciate you letting me continue to. And I appreciate your time, John.
And you.
Yeah, well done. Thank you, brother.
Thanks.